phone instead of a microphone.
I am actually parked right now. I should have already been in a parking spot and in my office, but I arrived on campus late enough. I literally cannot find a parking spot right now. So I've been driving around, and that's where I finally just pulled off and thought I could do this in the car.
Here we go, folks. We are live with the Aspie Bridge show. I'm going to get the recording going. I'm in a business meeting as well, but we're going to bridge this together. I'm trying to find my recording features.
Kurt, before you record, have you made Emily a co-host so she's able to work? Emily needs to be co-host as well.
Yeah. Well, here we go. All right, here we go. We got the recording going, and then we're going to make Emily the host. So here you go, folks. Enjoy the show. Emily, take it away.
All right. Good morning, everyone. How are you today? Well, as you can tell, I'm a little raspy. But I'm here because it's important, and today is important. Today is all about words and tone matter, and they really do. Let me start off with my tagline. With all the awesome, awesome people that are out on the internet talking about autism, you don't need one more person to tell you what autism is about. The purpose of my bridge show, the Aspie Bridge, is to show us that we can connect to society, but we need a little help doing that. And today I have two wonderful guests, Sandra Volks and Susan Postikoff. Did I say that correctly, Susan? All right, cool. Thank you. Wanted to make sure. So, as I say, with all the awesome people out talking about autism, you don't need another person. There's Paul Micallef in Australia, and Sam in the UK, in Europe, and Sandra Hendricks in the UK, and a number of people that are in the US alone talking about autism. You don't need another autistic person telling you what it's about. And here we go. We're going to talk about words matter. And what I want to tell you is I'm going to start off with a quote today. It's from Napoleon Hill, and it is my favorite quote. And it is, think twice before you speak, for your words can plant the seed of success or failure in the mind of another. So that goes to say that if your expectation of the person is low, you're going to get a low personality. You're going to get a unconfident personality. You're going to get someone who's going to be all tucked up in themselves. But if you can help them rise to the occasion and help them to speak more clearly and more confidently, then you're going to find that they're going to rise up and they're going to be the person that they can be. Now, I want to tell you, Aspies come with all different levels of communication. So we're not talking about the quantity of words that they share. We're talking about the quality of their diction. Are they in their voices? Are they complaining? Are they whining? Or are they sitting and talking out? And that's where I have Sandra here. But before I go to Sandra, as I say, this is a two-way bridge. On my side, I'm the torchbearer, and I'm the one who will help women to cross over the bridge once they're ready to become part of society. And they need to rise to the occasion. They can't just speak in their little girl voice or their complaining or criticizing voice and expect the society is going to accept them. They really need to rise to the occasion and say, I demand respect. I have great ideas. Please listen to me, because the other way is not going to work. And that's where Sandra's going to come in and help you. On the other side, I have Susan, who's going to help society understand that when society can change their intonation, can be more aware of what the Aspie woman needs to succeed, to thrive, to come out on top, she's going to feel more empowered. And that's where Susan comes in. She's great at empowerment. And I want to tell you that what you need to do is you need to expect that the Aspie woman is going to take some time processing her words. If you're going to be impatient as a society, she's not going to give you the best language. She's not going to have the best answer. And we're going to go into that more as we come up through our conversation, but it's a two-way bridge. So I'm going to start with Sandra. And Sandra and I are going to kind of mock the wrong way and the right way to communicate as an Aspie woman. Because as I say, if you're not bringing your best self forward, not the neurotypical best self, your best self, you are not going to receive the respect you deserve, no matter how many wonderful ideas you have. If you're not talking in a clear voice, excuse my voice today, but if you're not talking in a clear voice, people aren't going to understand you. If they're going to give you 5 seconds or more, we're going to work on that with Susan, but if they can't understand you, they're going to tune right out. So Sandra, we're both aware that the posture of the Aspie woman will help her receive more positive attention and receive opportunities she deserves. Can you teach us what you think might be necessary for her to change her delivery so that she can receive more opportunities?
Suzanne, this is a wonderful mix here, having Susan, Suzanne, and Sandra, 3 S's. I think I'm going to answer that with just a very brief background about myself. I have been a chatterbox ever since I was born. I've been singing on stage since I was 5. I've been a school teacher. And and then 40 years in the financial business, and now I'm doing coaching and speaking. But the truth of the matter is, and I imagine Susan will be the same, and really when we were little, we were told to be quiet, or we were told children should be seen and not heard. Now, I'm much older than Susan, but in that kind of a capacity, and then what are people going to think? Oh, what are they thinking about me? Even with me being so outgoing on the outside, inside, I was feeling the pain of I'm not good enough. I can't be heard. I'm supposed to be quiet. I can't speak up. So inside, my voice was very much what you're talking about when you were saying, are you like this? Inside, that's who I was. I don't know about Susan. You can nod if you ever had that feeling like, yeah, I was the little one inside, because we were the little child inside. And being Aspie, possibly, from what I've learned from Suzanne, maybe possibly feels like now I'm the adult, but I'm still hiding like this. And so when you want to speak out into the world, when you start to fake it till you make it, you see Sandra, you see Suzanne, you see how Suzanne is just, whew, that didn't come naturally. Suzanne said, I was like that. And if other people are going to listen to me, I'm going to have to throw my shoulders back, lift my head up. I had to learn to put my head up and just smile. For decades, because I'm an old, I've got a lot of decades. For decades, I pretended, and I would hold my head up and I would smile. And people just thought I was brilliant because I always had a smile on my face. So a smile is really a good start. Walking straight, no matter what you're feeling inside, just doing it, you start to feel your own personal power. And it might be just a little seed at the beginning, but it grows and grows and grows. And my best example of that has been meeting Suzanne. You can choose, because life is a series of choices and decisions, minute by minute by minute. I am deciding I am worthy. I am deciding I do have something to say. I am deciding I am worth just as much as Susan or Suzanne or Emily or anyone else in this world to breathe this air and to drink this water and be on this earth with whatever I bring. So that, as you can see, is all a mental status. And once you overcome the mental status to fake it till you make it, it will deepen and you'll take it down into your heart and your being. And you won't need to be like this even inside anymore, because you will know in your heart, I am a complete person with things to bring to the world from wherever I am.
Oh, Sandra, that's awesome. And what I found from my own personal situation is when we have family members who forget that we have a voice, we can be squelched down. We can be told, as you said, to be quiet. And for 18 years, somehow, something in my brother's life is always more important than me. So as soon as I get out into the outside world, that's when I said, whoa, whoa, I'm not at the dinner table anymore. I have a voice. I have ideas. And that's when I started to come out. My brothers went 20 minutes away to college. I went 3 hours away because there was no other way for me to find my voice. And so just like you getting on stages and such, we need to find our voice. But we need to command respect in our voices in order to be heard. Susan, thank you for coming today. How can we help industry leaders understand that people on the spectrum may have great speech and they may have great eye contact, but if the tone is accusing or demanding, it will not inspire but shut down people who might have the very solution that we need.
I mean, first of all, everything that both of you just said resonates so much. And Sandra, I don't know if you studied NLP, but when you talked about like you lift your head and you put on that smile, those are NLP techniques. And one of the things, for example, if anyone has children or if anybody's child or small child has ever had a temper tantrum, if you can convince them during that tantrum to smile, the tantrum will end. So I have my grandson who I was saying, okay, I said, I want you to just growl for a minute. And then I'm like, okay, now I want you to do it with a weird smile, and just the weirdest smile you can do. And I just make him do this weirdest smile, and he'd start laughing, and the tantrum's gone. And, but what you said, Suzanne, I mean, that was my experience. I grew up, and Sandra as well. I grew up, as this, the girl, and I had a brother a year older than me, and, everything he said was brilliant, and I should be seen and not heard. And you went 3 hours away. I went, I was in Saskatchewan at the time. I left, I went to Ontario, and then I went to California. And, I get no respect from my family. They don't know who I am. They still think of me, that little girl who's supposed to be seen and not heard. And, I'm like, gee, I've got doctors who will ask me for advice on, devices and biologics for different treatments. And my family, tells me, that I don't know anything and I think I'm a doctor. I'm like, I don't think I'm a doctor. I have a certain base of knowledge that I'm respected for in the industry, across, the United States and Canada, but, you don't have to listen to me. It's okay.
Isn't it wonderful when we can relax and know we're okay and just say, that's where I came from. So look how awesome I am now that I've chosen to hear my own voice,
Yeah.
be my own voice.
Yes, but there is still that issue in the corporate world. And, a lot of our corporate leaders grew up in that industrial era. We've gone from the industrial era, and then Stephen Covey in his book, The Eighth Habit, wrote about, leave my old book behind, the 7 habits. I mean, they're good, but we're now in the information age and things are a little different. Now the hierarchy, is no longer serving us the way it used to. The hierarchy was helpful when there were people who didn't have enough information, who didn't have enough knowledge, and didn't have their own voice to speak. And now we've got people who have that knowledge. The internet brought information to everybody, whether they were able to go to college or not. We have an informed population. But now we've even gone beyond that. And we've got Tom Peters now talking about the era of humanism and how important it is. So here we are. We've gone from the industrial age to the information age to the era of humanism. But most of our top executives at our companies are, for the most part, men who grew up in the industrial era.
Wow.
And so we really, we've got human resources talking about, inclusion, and a lot of times, it's just looks like they're being inclusive. They're, well, no, you have to have these people speak to this person who's going to be their manager before you hire them, but they don't quite realize that we actually would like to interview our manager. We would like to find out his background, and we'd like to actually be a true part of the interview process, and help uncover, whether or not this is really the right person for the job. And, we're getting there. Some companies are better than others. But in terms of empowered communication, what it really is, and it really helps people get to where Sandra was talking about faster and where Suzanne was talking about. And so there are exercises in that book, and the teachings in that book really help you to connect with yourself, to understand yourself better, to understand what affected your current belief structure. Because we've adopted a lot of these beliefs from from these parents, decades ago, and who said, we're supposed to be seen and not heard. And they've got, if a man, speaks in that authoritative voice, well, that's expected. And if a woman speaks in that authoritative voice, what a bitch. And and so, and we have to stand and peacefully, acknowledge within. First, we have to know ourselves, so we have that inner confidence. And then we also have to understand that other people have adopted beliefs they didn't necessarily agree with. And so rather than judge them for being jerks to us, we do need to come for everyone from a place of compassion, understanding, and sincere interest. So when we all listen, and when there's an argument, there are always two participants. It might look like one person is, unless one person's just venting on the other, it's a two-way. And so, one of the things that I used to find really helpful, I used to have a boss who, if I wanted anything done, he tended to come from this place of anger. And so what I would do is I'd call him and I'd say, how's your day going? And he would, and I just let him vent for about 10 minutes. And when he was done venting, I'm like, oh yeah, it's really frustrating. I can definitely appreciate that. And then at some point he'd say, well, what'd you call me for? Oh, well, I wanted to ask, I need this support, or I, need, finances for this, or whatever I needed. And the answer was always yes after that. Because I allowed him to clear that space and get past whatever he was dealing with. But if I'd tried to say, hey, I need this, and he'd been trying to talk, and, we'd get into it and we'd never get anything done.
So you're saying, Susan, that is a skill that the Aspies can also use, not just...
Yeah.
That's what everyone can use, is just listen and let it vent, let it roll out first. And you don't have to let it even spill all over you. You've got a little protective shield right around it. It just rolls off you like water off the duck. You've got an oil shield. So let them vent and do their thing. And when they've got that, okay, wow, that you got to feel better now. Now I have to ask you about this and that. So it really is two-way, Susan, that we have to be able to just stay in our own awesomeness, our own place. Let that all run off. And when they get it all run out, they're going to be tired out. Okay, I've done my bit. Now, how can I help you?
And you know what ego is, right?
That's the last man. That's what you call the last man standing, or the last woman standing, just let it roll.
Well, we all know, like, ego is really fear.
Yes.
And people think of crying as emotion. Oh, women, they're so emotional. Well, anger is an emotion. It's actually, and I remember, I was kind of, people always see me as being more masculine. And I think that's because, when I was 5 years old and my dad was spanking me and I thought he was unjust, that he hadn't really listened to, both sides of the story and knew what really happened. I just, in that moment, I got angry and I refused to cry. And, throughout my life, I would get angry. And so I kind of understand where men are coming from. They're not allowed to cry, so they have to get angry.
Right. Right.
And but there's a little boy in there who needs a good cry. And we no matter who we're dealing with, the bully is in fear. He's trying to
Yeah.
express something to prevent being bullied himself.
Oh gosh, yes. I have a question that comes up further down the road, but I brought up two quick little stories I wanted to share with you. One of them happened 30 years ago. And here I was this for 18 years of my life. We're sitting at the table and not knowing that I could just speak up and get up on the table and say, listen to me. I was out at a cocktail party with my brother and his then fiance, and I was talking to a bunch of Harvard women, and they were actually listening to me. Now, here my brothers are going to Brown. I went to Plymouth State in New Hampshire, and they had a less than view of me.
Yeah.
But I'm talking to Harvard women, and the two of them say, "We got to get her out of here. We think that she might be boring them." But the women who I was talking to were all in rapture with what I was saying, and they're like, and that's still to their day. Now, I just went out for a Christmas dinner not too long ago with my brothers, and I'm starting to talk about some of the things that I learned in my organization, Brave Thinking Institute. And they're like, whoa, that's too deep for me. So I'm just like, where did I go from being that little, I can't talk, to being too far above them? I mean, it's just kind of huh. I can't understand how I went from one extreme to the other so quickly, but I found my voice and I found my ideas and I found who I was. And I found an organization that supported my ideas. And I felt so much better. Let's go on to the next question. Can we help both sides know when to speak up and when to keep negative comments to themselves? I have found with my experiences as currently, I will go and offer something nice to someone. And if it's not perfect, if it doesn't meet their exact needs, rather than saying, well, it's free, I didn't have to buy it, so I should just keep my mouth shut. And instead, it's like, oh, it's not going to work for me. And it's like, huh, that's really interesting that you think that it's okay to be critical of something that's been given to you. And that's part of what I learned as gratitude in. Yes, we may not have the best situation, but we don't want to be attacked with criticism just because we're Aspie. We don't want to be attacked because people think we're less than. I won't accept that. I deserve respect. And if I'm going to offer something wonderful to you, I don't want you to kiss my feet, but I do expect you to understand when to keep the mouth zipped and when to say, I really need to find something for myself that's better because it's not working for me. Well, okay, that's a completely different tone than being critical of what I gave you. So, my question again is, how can we help people on both sides of the bridge understand that some comments don't need to be vocalized?
There is this most amazing exercise that we do in live workshops. And it kind of comes from a place of, and we'll have other groups, or you can even do it in pairs. And you've got one person who's, receiving a criticism and one person who's giving a criticism. And the receiver, after listening to the criticism, in their mind considers, okay, I didn't necessarily ask for this information. I don't necessarily agree with it. I didn't give them authority to criticize me in this way. And I'm open to conversation about it in the future. Mm-hmm. And so it's a place of, okay, well, thank you for that. I'm interested in understanding where this belief you have comes from. What's behind your judgment? Because a criticism is like a judgment.
Oh,
And so it's you've gotta, it's coming to the understanding, and when you find out where they're coming from, it's like, oh, well, but have you considered this perspective? What about this? And then we can educate.
You know what's coming to mind?
I'd love to hear.
I think I want a talking stick. You might be familiar with a talking stick with the indigenous people. It's a beautiful thing. Whoever is holding the stick. So if this was the stick, I would be holding it. And while I have the stick, everyone listens. And when I've said my bit, I pass the stick along to the next person. And so that is an indication that I'm not done yet. But you know what I would like on the end of that big stick? A great big rubber ear. Because the answer to everything we're talking about is using our ears in a two-way conversation. If you're ranting, you're not listening to anything because you're just full of yourself. There's your fear, there's your anger, there's your bullying, there's all that power over baloney. But if you're listening, you're now into a conversation. And to our earlier point, Suzanne, when you were telling your story, we want to switch, get rid of but. If you hear yourself saying but, stop.
Don't switch be a butthead.
Yes, and. Yes, and. Because whatever they're saying, there's 10% truth in there, even if there's not 50 or 100. So we give credit. Yes, and we add on. But the conversation must go on because we're listening or we can't have the conversation. So I would say if you're not listening, you won't be in conversation. So for your Aspies, listen. Listen intently. What are they trying to say? Even if it might be coming across a little rude because they don't know another way. Like I wouldn't have known what to call people. Yeah, I would see you. I think, Suzanne, when we first met, you said, you know, you're autistic and Asperger's. And I said, you don't have to identify yourself every time we speak. You don't need to label yourself. So we have to be careful about that. Somewhere we might just say, yes, and what I need is really, if you slow down a little bit and rephrase it, I would like to really understand. That's where you take responsibility to let people in society know you didn't understand that. People in society, I have to then come back and say, I must have many different ways I can say that. I must not have said it in a comprehensive way. I need to learn as well. Everybody needs to learn. And if anybody doesn't need to learn, they're so full of ego that they don't even live on the planet.
Oh, yes. I was just going to say that entitlement. I'm older, I'm more senior, I'm more this, I'm more that. And for some reason that when people feel that they have the seniority, it's okay to be rude. It's never okay to be rude.
No.
It's, let's go back to the quote I put in. Think twice before you speak. That means let's find a way to say something to someone such that you can express my feelings. And we usually learn that I feel like I need a piece of furniture that might meet my needs better versus I don't like it. It's not going to work for me. There are two different ways to say things. And I think that we need to help both sides understand that there's no entitlement here. You don't get to be better. And I know, Sandra, you and I had that conversation a long time ago. I don't have to label myself. But I guess what I always felt was that by explaining who I was, not complaining who I was, explaining who I was, it helped people understand that I was capable of great ideas. I was capable of getting out into society and making friends. I was capable. So I guess I didn't see it as a negative whenever I labeled myself. I wanted to be the torchbearer that I talk about, saying, you may be autistic.
But you set me up, you see. In that case, then you set me up to treat you differently. You don't need to be, I mean, there's going to be some, but the treating differently would be the same with Susan and I talking without the Aspie aspect. We're going to set each other up for failure if we label ourselves in any way, rather than listen to the two sides of the conversation. Once you've established that I really do need I think differently. My sister thought I would embarrass her in the interview because I'm such a rapid fire. My brain just goes tit, 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 and I see the whole thing. She is introspective and needs to take it in and think about it. So she thought I might embarrass her. No, it's I'll give you time to do your thinking. It's looking at each other's needs, and she's not Aspie.
Oh, right. Yeah,
Right.
that's true.
Introspective people need time to think. You're Aspie, you need time to think. You don't need to, it's just, I need a little more time. And I will produce for you because I want to really learn it. And when I really learn it, you're going to be really happy.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's interesting. And I just want to bring up a quick point because a lot of us who were misdiagnosed, clinical depression, ADHD, bipolar, this or that, by the therapist who we went to see. And what would happen to us is that we would get medicated and it was supposed to fix us. And what I want to say is that while I may have I've noticed what I'm noticing. And I understand that words do affect me. When I first started being a coach, I was on the positive support language. And that, Susan, you'll find is very important. That's why I wanted to ask you to be on my panel today, because I was coaching positive supportive language to help every person feel like they are unique, qualified individuals with a voice instead of, well, she's disabled. I hate the D at the end of disabled, but I also understand for me that I'm highly sensitive, which means that words come at me with spears, not with a throwing a paper at me. And so I need to be aware that there is a happy medium between how I take something that someone says versus letting it be an arrow to my heart. And so that's an interesting way for people to realize, yes, notice what you're noticing, notice who you are, and recalibrate how you react to things. So the next part is opportunities.
I think Susan was going to speak to that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Susan.
That's a really rich conversation.
Well, actually, something that I had wanted to say was when Sandra talked about the talking stick with the E on it.
The ear.
Thank you, ear. We also need a plus I, because our ears hear, they don't listen. Listening is hearing plus interpretation. And that's where all those beliefs come in. So on the one hand, we need to learn how we interpret and how we might be altering a message coming from somebody else and what their interpretation might have been that they were sending, and then how they, it's like the Zen of listening, where you're outside the conversation, observing while you're within the conversation and noting the interactions and the interpretations going on all over the place. And that's where like that sincere interest, the true compassion, and setting aside judgment in exchange for understanding.
Oh,
that's special.
Perfect. I love that. Yes. I'm going to now talk about the Aspie woman going into society to make a living for herself, because so often what's happened is that once they may or may not get their voice and they go into society, they go to interview for jobs. Now, if we're not talking the way they want us to talk, we lose so many opportunities. When there can be another one who's a BSer who can go in and talk his way through an interview and then sit on the job and do nothing. Whereas we're like, because I couldn't answer your question in 2 seconds flat, I don't get the job, because the neurotypical person who walked in and gave you a bunch of BS that made it sound good to you, they get the job, but they're not doing anything. How can we help industry leaders realize that they need to really think of the content that's coming out, not the timing of how it's answered? Because I find that they need to have both ideas. They need to realize that it's not going to come out immediately, but it may be a much better answer than the other person who answered in the interview before us and then is sitting on their backside saying, got the job. I don't have to do anything now.
And I think one of the things in that situation, in that interview setting, is just, when somebody asks you that question, say, now just let me take a moment because I really want to make sure I understand what you're asking.
Mm.
I really care about what you're asking, and I want to make sure that I give you the best answer I can give you.
I like that.
Nice.
I like that. Do you have anything to add, Sandra, to that?
I think this brings us right back into the yes and. It's to keep the conversation going. If we're doing the yes and letting the conversation go, that's kind of what you're doing. You're catching their attention with the pause and the thought, and you're buying a little time to come back with your response. Before you go to an interview, you can actually practice. What is it you wanted to say? And if you write it out and say it, is that what you wanted them to really hear? Oh, no, not really. Okay, so rewrite it where there's some words that are not positive. Rewrite it. Was that? And then call Suzanne or whoever and read it to them. And what are you hearing? Don't tell them what you're saying. What are you hearing? See, at the end of every year, I write a letter to my clients. And what I have to do, I used to hand it to my common law fellow at the time, and he'd say, oh, I'm not educated. I don't know. I don't need any of that. I'm not in the mailbox with that letter. What are you reading? What are you seeing? Well, right here, I have no idea what you're talking about. Oh, okay. I need to clean that up. I'm not in the mailbox. So it doesn't matter who it is. You can read that back to Susan Postanek or to Suzanne Plumley, to me. You can read it back to anybody. And is it falling right? What are you getting from it? And if they're not getting what your intention is, rewrite it. Rewriting and practicing what you want to say looks after those times when I know we've all had, damn, I wish I'd thought I'd say that at the time. That's what I would have said. And well, before you go to the interview, you research the company and what the job is that they need to get done. You research it. You ask somebody, what exactly is the job that needs to be done? And then explain why you are the one that's going to give the dedication. But you do that with practicing and doing your writing and your scripting before. So when that part of the conversation comes up, your thinking is already done. So again, then you'll say yes and you'll have time to pull that up out of the file drawers in your mind and respond. What about you, Susan? What do you do as an interviewer?
Well, I come from that space of, really taking my time. So I think as an interviewer, I really want to hear who the person really is. And I do also, I want to make sure that that person's giving me their true self. And so I ask a lot of open-ended questions, and I really want to hear how they respond. And I might ask the same question more than once to see how they come through in different times with different wording. I'm looking to see that they're not giving me a canned answer, that they're really telling me how they feel and where they're coming from. And so
and the other thing, if you're interviewing with somebody where the interviewer doesn't have the patience to be kind within the interviewing, you probably don't want to work there anyhow. So don't take it as a defeat on yourself. Take it as, I wouldn't even want to work here.
Right. My biggest challenge. Sorry, go ahead, Susan.
There was one time that I had applied for a job, and they set up this interview, and my parents were coming to visit. They were only here for a couple of days, and my cousin was here for a day from the UK. I had one day to have that trip with the whole family, and we all planned to go to the Wild Animal Park together by San Diego. And then they called me to set up this interview, and that was the only day they could do it. I said, are you sure you couldn't possibly do it, a couple of days later on the Thursday or the next day or whatever? Oh, no, not possible. This is the only time available. Okay. So I rented a car, sent my parents, my cousin off to the Wild Animal Park without me, and, got that all planned. And then the morning of the interview, they said, oh, is there any way you could come tomorrow instead? And it was the time I'd asked for.
Wow.
And I said, oh, sure, I booked it. And then the next morning, I called them at 7 a.m. and canceled it. I got to want to work for you. You obviously have no consideration for my time, for my family, for anything. You don't give a one iota about me as a person, as a human, as your employee. All you cared about was what was convenient for your CEO. And when it was no longer convenient for him, then suddenly, it had to change.
Ah,
So you were going to be towing the line no matter what when you got into that kind of a job.
No, I wouldn't take the job.
No.
Not
Yeah.
worth it.
now
That's too
I
short.
do find a lot of us Aspies, and I just say that again because I just want to say that I'm on this side, and they say it's a numbers game, and I get that, but at the same time, the amount of energy that we put out in an interview, only to hear, and this has happened to me more than once in the school education fields, you were wonderful, but we gave it to a better suited candidate. And I knew it was someone who was neurotypical, someone who didn't have quirks, or whereas I could have been there every day giving my best. And what happens is that we run out of desire for those rejection notes. We don't want to keep hearing you were wonderful, but you're great, but we gave it to a better. And this is where my experiences come from is the fact that I even had a principal that was just waiting for an opportunity to fire me because she didn't want to deal with me.
You know what it's bringing to me right now is turn that around to an asset. You might even say, I am Aspie, and a wonderful part of the Aspie is once they've got it, I'm here, I'm loyal, I'm steady, you're going to get really good work. And so many people that interview say, well, you're wonderful, but when I hear that but, I know that you haven't understood how dedicated and how skilled I am in the job. Because I think, first, there'll be fewer mistakes. Because I care and I appreciate having that job and the opportunity to grow, because that but won't matter. I will be there more for you than the one that said, oh, I can do it. But they take the time off, but they don't show up to work, but they don't have the dedication. I think you could use that.
Yeah. And
I like that.
When I first came, when I
Oh,
first
okay.
came to back into the area, I had I was a school teacher originally, so that's why doing things 3 different ways is really just a natural, and that's what you're talking about. But I ended up being a waitress for 6 years. And when I applied, when I'd come back from Europe or whatever with the military, I applied at the Wandelin Inn, which was a new hotel in town. And at that time, there were 400 applicants for 40 positions. So just know, Aspies, there's a whole lot of people getting those no's.
And
400 people for 40 jobs. Sorry, Susan, go ahead.
Well, the other thing is, it's not only an asset in terms of the things you bring as a result of that, but also it's what you're giving to the children. So you can help those kids who are having issues, those kids with behavioral issues that don't get understood by the other teachers. You bring a new level of understanding and a complementary skill set that they might not realize is important. And it's up to you to let them know your being special is necessary. This is special. I know special can be a derogatory comment, but this is a special skill. This is a special set of abilities and a special level of understanding that those others don't have. And some of these things need to be portrayed in the interview and on the job when they're starting to, put you into that, oh no, they're trying to get rid of me. Oh no, they don't want me. It's like, no, I want you to understand why you need me. Here's how I can add to what you don't already have.
Right. Oh gosh, yeah. No, I would love to have had that principal give me the time to explain that, because it was just a one and done. You're out of here. Instead of understanding what went on, how come there were problems. Because this one little boy that accused me of hitting him, I tried to take him into another classroom. And they didn't see that. They only saw what they think they saw.
And
So
the
she didn't give me
Suzanne
an
today,
explanation.
I'm going to say the Suzanne today would have continued that conversation, whether they liked it or not, or brought it back at some
Yeah,
way.
they
It
didn't give
would,
me that opportunity. We're almost done, but I want to get in this last question before we have to finish up. How can we get the family to understand that their member can be autistic, even if they can speak clearly and have no decent eye contact? So many families dismiss the challenges of autism if it is late diagnosed. They need to know that aging brings on new stresses, and the traditional 8-hour job is not emotionally possible for us. It's a lot of sensory coming in, a lot of different things, and standing on our feet. And while we try and hold our composure and we do the job, it's hard for us to do the normal job. But families often say to us, it's just a mind thing. But it's like they don't understand that it's exhausting for us. And while we may have great conversation, while we may be the same person we were at 18, at 25, at 40, that doesn't mean that we're still the same person. We have new challenges. I've been finding out this year. I have new challenges, and I've found coping skills for myself, but some women are not strong enough to say to their families, whoa, what I could do at 25 is not the same thing I have the energy to do now. How can we help families understand that our needs have changed and we need a little bit more family support? I'm at the point where I just have to accept them for who they are. And that's exactly what we're supposed to do, is accept them for who they are. But man, that hurts to have a family that does not validate that our needs have changed, that while we may not have been diagnosed at 18 doesn't mean that we're not. Either of you have a comment on that?
The words, hey, when this happens, when you respond this way, when you say this, it hurts me. It makes me feel less than. It makes me feel sad. And then from there, they love you. Chances are they will be willing to listen and understand you.
Mm.
It's just the honesty that's this, when you say it this way, when you do it this way, this hurts me. Please listen to me. Please acknowledge what I'm asking you that I need.
Yeah. Sometimes some families go a little bit controlling, narcissistic, and think that, okay, well, if you think you're autistic, then you're disabled. It's like, no, I'm not disabled. I just have different needs now.
I think as well, from my point, I have felt the sting of excommunication. So at some points, there's going to be some families that just, you're never going to get through to them. They're not open to the conversation. They're not open, that they're dysfunctional in a very deep way, or with a very deep, not in all ways, but maybe on that topic. So I have felt the sting of excommunication. I have felt like I'm outside at different times. And it's okay. The reason I say it's okay is because I get the strength to know that I am fine and I contribute my own way.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't, it's again, that's not okay. I'm going to command the respect that is mine. So even though the family basically, that was my in-laws that basically excommunicated me to protect my ex. When you look at that within their whole family culture, they couldn't continue with me and my ex. So Sandra has to go. Doesn't change that they're wonderful people. Doesn't change that when somebody died, I still went to the funeral. Doesn't matter any of those things. It's just the day-to-day. There's no connection anymore on a day-to-day, and that really hurts. But I can't change that. I have to honor them and accept that's what they understand from their culture.
Right.
And that helps.
Capacity.
It does help, because there's that little piece of sadness in there, but that's okay. It's like you put that little piece of sadness in your panty drawer wrapped in velvet. You know how you tuck a little special jewel in your special drawer, but wrap it in velvet first and know that you're fine.
I was just going to say that, Susan. What would you recommend to the Aspie women who have felt estranged from their families? My feeling is that once they go over the bridge and they find the team leader, you're my tactful communication team leader, and you help women understand how to speak confidently. But once the women are ready to put their shoulders back and talk correctly and go into society, we need to help them understand that there are going to be some family members that are just not going to get it. We just have to let them be, because if you keep trying to throw that ball against the wall and change them, they're not going to change.
And you're going to be very tired. What do you do with that, Susan?
You accept, there is an acceptance of what you can't change, and recognize that is their disability. That is their limitation. That is their limiting belief, their limiting level of knowledge. That's what their disability is.
Wow.
Ladies, I want to thank you so much. Any final words on communication and words matter before I wrap this up today?
I'm just going to say I loved what Susan just said. That is their disability, and that's okay. I always come back to just check both sides. Is this something I'm contributing to, or is this something that's theirs? Whose monkey is it? Whose circus is it? Is it mine to change? No, get your hands off and stop it. If it's mine to change because I need to change something, own it and change it. But I love that. So, that's, to me, I had to say, that's their cultural belief. That's their limiting belief. And they've lost me, but I'm not away. I mean, if they ever called on me, I'm there.
Right.
Back to Susan for your last words.
Yes. Your last words, Susan?
Oh, I just want to thank you, Suzanne, for pulling this together. Sandra, so beautiful to meet you. What a wonderful group of women who are so caring and so compassionate and so loving towards each other, but also towards the world. Just thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, both of you. I appreciate your time today. Next week on the Aspie Bridge, I have Dr. Wendella Whitcomb Marsh, and we're talking about helping the Aspie woman go from her home, where she might have been there up until age 25, even because she wasn't sure she could handle the outside world, and helping her go into society and learn some of the basic home needs, the basic transportation needs, money management, and relationships, and help her to understand how she can best benefit and not get hurt. And I hope you'll come back next week. Thank you so much, ladies, for coming today. And I hope you have a wonderful day.
You as well.
You too.
Thank you.